The room smelled of cigars, ink, and arrogance. Heavy drapes muffled the winter chill, while chandeliers threw golden light on polished mahogany tables covered with maps. Africa, vast and green, yet to them, empty. 14 European men leaned over those maps, their fingers tracing rivers they had never seen, mountains they could not name, and lands they had never set foot upon. "Gentlemen," announced Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, "let us bring civilization to the dark continent." A young Ghanaian man, Kwame Adusei, stood silently at the corner, serving as an interpreter for the British delegation. His heart thundered in his chest. He understood every word, the polite tones that masked cruelty, the smiles that concealed greed. He had been educated in London, a colonial success story, they called him. But here, watching men carve his homeland like a roast, he understood what civilization truly meant: control. When the Belgian representative drew a neat red line across the Congo, Kwame felt a jolt, not on the map, but in his soul. A continent was being dismembered, one signature at a time. By the time the conference ended in 1885, Africa had been divided like a stolen inheritance. No African leader was invited. Kwame returned home months later to the Gold Coast, his London education now a burden. He tried to warn his people, "They will not bring progress. They will bring chains made of paper and taxes. They will take our gold, our cocoa, our palm oil, and call it trade." But the chiefs were divided. Some saw opportunity in the white man's market. Others trusted the missionaries who spoke of love and heaven. Kwame watched as railways were built, not for Africans but for export routes. Schools appeared not to empower minds, but to teach obedience. Walter Rodney would one day describe it perfectly. The wealth created by African labor and natural resources was used to develop Europe, while Africa was left underdeveloped. But in Kwame's time, he only saw the symptoms and felt the helplessness of a man watching a storm from the shore. He began keeping a journal, writing by candlelight. "They have drawn lines across our lands, but those lines will one day draw blood." By the time the conference ended over a century later, Kwame Adusei stared at a cracked leather notebook she found in her late grandfather's chest. The pages were yellowed, but the handwriting was clear. Berlin, 1884. Bismarck. Division. Trade in chains. Kwame was a journalist working on a documentary titled Africa's Unfinished Map. She had always wondered why Africa's borders looked like geometry homework, straight lines slicing through cultures, languages, and families. Now she knew. Her great-grandfather had been there. She turned on her camera and began recording herself, voice steady but burning. "My ancestors stood in the room where Africa was divided. They called it the Berlin Conference. They said it was about civilization, but it was about control, about who would own Africa's land, gold, oil, and souls." In 1885, Africa had been divided like a stolen inheritance. No African leader was invited. Kwame returned home months later to the Gold Coast, his London education now a burden. He tried to warn his people, "They will not bring progress. They will bring chains made of paper and taxes. They will take our gold, our cocoa, our palm oil, and call it trade." But the chiefs were divided. Some saw opportunity in the white man's market. Others trusted the missionaries who spoke of love and heaven. Kwame watched as railways were built, not for Africans but for export routes. Schools appeared not to empower minds, but to teach obedience. Walter Rodney would one day describe it perfectly. The wealth created by African labor and natural resources was used to develop Europe, while Africa was left underdeveloped. But in Kwame's time, he only saw the symptoms and felt the helplessness of a man watching a storm from the shore. He began keeping a journal, writing by candlelight. "They have drawn lines across our lands, but those lines will one day draw blood." Kwame's research took her from dusty archives in London to the ruins of rail lines in Ghana, built to extract resources during colonial rule. She interviewed economists, historians, and farmers who still paid the price of decisions made a century ago. In Nigeria, she filmed young entrepreneurs struggling with imported inflation and trade imbalances. In Congo, she saw children mining cobalt not for local wealth but for global tech giants. In Kenya, she heard teachers explaining how post-colonial debt kept schools underfunded. Everywhere, the same story whispered through generations. Africa was made poor to make Europe rich. Walter Rodney had written that development and underdevelopment are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. Amma saw it in real time through the lens of her camera. But she also saw something else: resilience. African youth turning reclaimed spaces into art studios. Farmers rebuilding communities through cooperatives. Women leading tech startups, defying every stereotype. It was as if the continent was finally taking the map back into its own hands. One afternoon, Amma traveled to Berlin for her documentary's final scene. She stood in the same city where the lines had been drawn, the ghosts of the conference lingering in the cold air. Holding her ancestors' journal, she spoke to the camera. The men who met here did not just divide land. They divided destinies. They turned Africa into a field of exploitation and then blamed us for the weeds they planted. But history is not just memory, it's power. And by remembering, we take that power back. She paused, tears glistening. My great-grandfather wrote, "They drew lines across our lands, but those lines will one day draw blood. The blood has been shed in wars, in poverty, in migration. But maybe now we draw new lines of unity, of truth, of freedom."